I'm Tom Goolsby, and this is my syndicated column for the third week in February 2013 entitled Expanding Medicaid, a Bad Move for Many Reasons. Have the Republicans lost their minds by rejecting the Medicaid extension? Yes, is the answer according to liberal Democrats and their allied editorial writers across the state. Well, these supporters of socialized health care are up in arms at the GOP's opposition to the first phase of Obamacare, that is, the setting up of a state health care plan. With their support of Senate Bill 10, Republicans in the General Assembly recently sent a clear message to President Obama: we don't want your big government takeover of our health care. Since the legislation was introduced, liberals have posited outrageous claims. The most ridiculous allegation is that by turning down the federal offer to expand Medicaid, 500,000 individuals from the lowest income families in North Carolina will miss out on free health care. This is their first and biggest lie. In a study conducted by Harvard, Boston University, and the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, as many as 80%, that's 400,000 of the recipients, would be taken from the rolls of privately insured individuals. That's right, hundreds of thousands of North Carolinians would drop their current private coverage in order to receive coverage from Uncle Sam and Daddy Barack. There's nothing surprising about this. The same thing happened with the federally mandated State Children's Health Insurance Program. According to the Congressional Budget Office, up to 50% of SCHIP enrollees were privately insured prior to the federal mandate. Another big lie is that for no good reason the opponents of Obamacare are rejecting allegedly billions of dollars of federal payments from 2014 to 2021. Such a claim is ridiculous. Under Obamacare, if the state doesn't create its own exchange, the federal government will create one. State leaders were wise in their refusal to opt into the expensive provisions of Obamacare. The bill's primary sponsor, Senator Tom Apodaca, a Republican from Henderson County, said, quote, "We're not running a state exchange because, to be honest, there's no such thing. A state exchange gives no state control, would cost the people of North Carolina $100 million a year, and the federal government chose to mandate health care exchanges, so they should pay for them," end quote. The Senate Rules Chair went on to point out that Obamacare's changes to Medicaid would cost North Carolina almost $2 billion through 2019. Now, state leaders are very concerned about the federal government's attempt to bait and switch them with free federal money. The fear is that these funds are just as likely to phase out after a few years, leaving North Carolina taxpayers holding the bag. Shortfalls in Medicaid funding are nothing new to the state. A recent audit shows that North Carolina taxpayers have already bailed out Medicaid to the sum of $1.4 billion over the last 3 years. In 2012 alone, the General Assembly was forced to pay over $500 million in surprise Medicaid shortfalls. State leaders have demonstrated great wisdom by not ceding any additional authority to the federal government. The English writer Anne Radcliffe said, quote, "I never trust people's assertions. I always judge them by their actions." She made a good point. To date, Washington has refused to provide key information regarding costly rules and regulations that North Carolina will have to follow under any such plan. If past actions of the feds are indicative of their future moves, it's wise to expect a shift of massive administrative, infrastructure, and operational costs to North Carolina taxpayers in the future. The bottom line is this: after many months of careful consideration, our elected officials have decided not to pursue a state-based exchange that is not mandated by federal law. Obamacare was forced on the citizens of this state against their will by the federal government. It's up to our political leaders at the state level to do everything possible to protect us from any and all unreasonable costs and burdens as Washington recklessly moves to implement socialized health care. I'm Tom Goolsby, a state senator, practicing attorney and law professor. I'm chairman of Senate Judiciary 1 and the Justice and Public Safety Committees.